Okay, hello, and welcome to this eSchool News webinar, Digital Modernization of K-12 Financial Operations, how to increase transparency, improve control and compliance, and mitigate fraud. My name is Kevin Hogan. I am the editor-at-large for eSchool News, and I am happy you are joining us today for what I know will be a very insightful and important conversation. This event is brought to you by SAP Concur. SAP is the world's leading provider of integrated travel expense and invoice management solutions, driven by a relentless pursuit to simplify and automate these everyday processes. With SAP Concur, a top-rated app guides employees through every trip. Charges are effortlessly populated into expense reports, and invoice approvals are automated. By integrating near real-time data and using AI to audit 100% of transactions, businesses can see exactly what they're spending without worrying about blind spots in the budget. SAP Concur solutions can help K-12 schools increase the accuracy of their financial accounting, improve compliance with state and federal guidelines, and streamline operational efficiency as they track spending. So before we get to our conversation, I'd like to take a minute to go over some of the features of the platform that we're using for this webinar. The event is being recorded, so you don't have to worry about missing a thing. Within a few days, you'll receive an email message that contains a link to the recorded webinar, along with a PDF of the slides. If you have any questions or comments for the panelists, there's a chat function there. Click on that. Feel free to use this to contact someone from the eSchool News team if you're having technical difficulties as well. So with these housekeeping items out of the way, let's get started with our conversation and some introductions. First, Derek Blair. Derek is the Director of Financial Management and Distribution at Rochester City School District. Derek has over 25 years of management experience with prior roles in manufacturing and accounting. He recently returned to the Rochester City School District after 2 years of working as a global enterprise resource planning consultant. He directs all operations for accounts payable, distribution center, and mailroom, utilizing Oracle and SAP to process and record $700 million in annual expense transactions. Also, we have Jim McClurkin. Jim is the Senior Director of Public Sector at SAP Concur. Jim is an industry veteran with having over 30 years experience consulting with clients in several verticals, helping them select the right solutions to address the problems their organizations are experiencing. At SAP Concur, Jim manages a team that is dedicated solely to providing solutions to the public sector. So gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us today. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin.
Derek, maybe we'll get started with you and talk a little bit about Rochester City Schools and the setup and the history of your legacy systems and where you are in the money game.
Yeah, well, we have about 52 schools and about 3 different locations for management. Our annual budget is just a little bit over $1 billion. We, like many others, had a lot of paper. When it comes to payables, invoicing, expense reports, and the amount of resources that we had to devote to processing, all that paper, manual entry, it just took a toll. I had at one point in time, I think 9 data entry people just entering in invoices and expense reports all day long. We really were looking for some sort of solution, and just doing a lot of searching on my part, came across SAP Concur. Met with them, enjoyed what we saw, and moved forward with travel and expense. And I tell you, it was night and day. We saw an immediate return. People were getting their money, our employees were happy with it because they were getting their money quicker, easier to input their expenses, book travel all in one place. And they didn't have to worry about printing out a piece of paper, filling it out, getting their manager to sign it, then submitting it to AP, and then 2 weeks, 3 weeks later, asking accounts payable, "Oh, did you guys get it? Did you pay it?" It was all in one platform. And we used that for about a year and started trying to think of other ways to utilize it. One of the things we weren't using it for were mileage expense reports. We kept that paper for reasons I don't even remember, but we changed over and started using it for mileage, which was about 200,000 to 300,000 a year in district mileage. Our teachers, a lot of them are itinerant. They go to multiple schools each day, and they had to keep track of where they went, write down the miles, calculate how many miles it was. We were reimbursing them per mile, and they had to calculate that, and every expense report had to get recalculated by AP staff to make sure there was no errors, and there's constant errors. So we instituted the mileage part, and our AP staff doesn't even look at them anymore. It's completely automated. It's correct because it uses a mileage calculator, which is Google Maps. They press a button and do their travel, and it more or less creates the expense report for them. So they liked that, and it was working great. We really did reduce a lot of costs in transactions and having to manage all that paper. And then we thought, well, hey, let's try it with invoice. So in 2016, we implemented Concur Invoice, and the reduction in data entry, it really did shock us, and how quickly, we were processing payments, at about maybe 50 to 80 days, and we wanted to do net terms of net 30, but it was very difficult to meet that. Our vendors were always upset. But as soon as we instituted Concur Invoice, the invoices go directly to Concur. Intelligent recognition uses, reads the invoice, and you don't have to do any data entry. It's already all there. We went to just managing the exceptions, which is really what we want to do. And a lot of things you find when you start actually looking at the errors instead of worrying about all the data entry. We found a lot of duplicate payments, triplicate payments. Just in that alone, we saved millions. So, and our auditors love it because we can just give them a link, set them up as an audit function where they can just go in and look at everything if they need to. So it's really been a game changer. I can't speak enough for it.
Well, Jim, you talk about when we hear Derek's experience in making these sort of changeovers, they're pretty dramatic. And we look at the current conditions that we're in school districts, just kind of coming out of the past 2 years in the pandemic. Why would you say this is a good time for districts to undergo this sort of digital transformation? It's something that is a pretty significant step, right? Talk about the conditions and how appropriate it would be. And Jim, I'm sorry, that was for you.
Sorry, I had my mute button on. Sorry about that.
Yep.
There's a mandate in changing for everything, and people coming out of the pandemic learned a lot of lessons, particularly in the public sector. Everything from suddenly people being remote workers, all of the challenges around dealing with paper and not having the right systems in place. So it really got people to start reevaluating technology and what they were buying with their technology dollars. So, they have a group of responsibilities, the partnering with IT and, maintaining user satisfaction, dealing with accounts payable and budgets and just keeping up and change with the changes. And like I was saying, spending your money wisely, getting the old most of, bang for your buck thing. And the challenge is, as Derek said, there's way too much paper, way too much manual processing, time consuming, error prone, as Derek mentioned, the exceptions. I actually had that very conversation with a very large state yesterday that has 375,000 vouchers outside of the PO process, outside of another 3.6 million invoices that they handle, that they do manual audit of, literally pulling it up. So we're doing that exact thing that Derek said. We're now moving all of these people from the pre-audit to post-audit operations, because this will all be done, and all they'll be getting will be the exceptions.
And Jim,
average,
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I wanted to jump on that because one of the bigger problems we had was we had 200 million in unencumbered spend. And I was trying to get a hold of it and trying to get control of that spend. And that's the main reason why we instituted Concur Invoice. I can say right now, we're at about 10 million unencumbered spend. So exactly what we wanted to do happened. We took a look and you can see all of these things happening without budgetary controls. And, our management said, well, okay, we got to stop. We got to start putting in requisitions for this stuff. And it really did help.
Yep. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And that's, the whole process starts to break down as those numbers grow. I mean, you can imagine a 375,000 pieces of paper, or a PDF, if you will, now coming in. You're talking about anywhere at any given time between 30 and 50 staff members looking at these things to find the exceptions and then deal with the exceptions, right? And instead, we're going to provide them all the other stuff, as Derek was saying, is going through right to payment, and we're collecting that on average 17 to 20% are exceptions. Something's wrong, something's not right, and we'll bring that number down that they're dealing with, and that's even a high number. We'll bring that number down to below 7% for them. So the impact, when you start thinking about the fully burdened cost of an employee per hour of doing that kind of work, the numbers become staggering.
Yeah. Now, talk about users. I mean, not even necessarily the end user, but Derek, the folks within the finance department themselves. Do you find that there's an immediate embrace for these automations, or is it something that you have to go through some professional development, or people a little bit concerned about losing their jobs or changing their jobs? Talk a little bit about the culture there when you go through this sort of automation process.
Yeah, everybody knows change is difficult, and there's always a few that are extremely resistant. And I can speak that I think it took me a good year to get everybody to really buy in. Proper training is really the start. I had to train 4,000 people, and being there and giving them resources. Concur has a lot of nice bells and whistles. You can go to the help icon and watch a video if you have questions, instead of having to call somebody. Also, it does seem that it is very intuitive. So even though someone may not like it at first, if they just do it once, they'll know, oh my God, this is so much easier. It's just getting over that fear.
Yeah. Does that resonate with you, Jim, when you think about other districts that are going through the process?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Change management is a big part of any, tech adoption situation, right? And as Derek said, there's always, a few late holdouts, but when they begin to realize that their job is getting better and they're going to be doing better functions, and what they're doing is really going to be using the taxpayer dollars in a better way. Everybody comes along eventually, and it really is important, to try and get buy-in early on, with leaders in various groups that you're going to support, because that then starts to trickle down, and it really helps with the overall adoption and dealing with that change management piece.
One of the things that kind of came up recently, because we're continuing. You should always try to innovate constantly. And I was asking a couple of our directors, how many things do you want to do that you don't have time to do? And everybody will say, oh, a bunch of stuff. So stop doing the data entry. Use something to help you get away from meaningless little tasks, and start focusing on the things that you feel can really help you in your departments.
Yeah. How can the recent government funding that we've been hearing all about, the focus, a lot of that has been on the instructional side, right? And in connectivity and other things, but do any of those fundings, Derek, do you find are helpful when it comes to automating the back end and some of the work that you do?
Yeah, and that funding really, it's there to help us with infrastructure, and now's the time, take advantage of it. We've basically have it all earmarked for transition to trying to be more efficient. And yeah, you can spend the money, and it can be costly, but you do have opportunities, and we're still trying to there's a lot of money out there, and we're doing a lot of capital spending, but that's also infrastructure with systems. We're redoing our whole ERP currently, changing from on-site to cloud, and it's a huge undertaking. But we all realize that that's the future. Having these programs on site, there's a lot of cost to that. Having a cloud-based platform really saves overhead, and it's dramatic on how much.
Yeah, Jim, why don't school districts adopt software as a service solutions? What's holding them back? Derek obviously is very progressive when it comes to this stuff, but what is it that is holding back other districts?
Well, I think some of it is legacy, right? A lot of people have been in place for a long period of time. They had if it's not broke, don't fix it mentality, but that's going away more and more. I mean, we think about it when you first started buying stuff on Amazon, right? You're like, oh, there'd be people like, my wife included, I'm never putting my credit card out there on the internet. This is craziness, right?
Yeah.
Well, I've got tire tracks worn in my driveway from the Amazon truck now. She's let's say. So that's always a part of it. But once they understand the cloud, it goes away. When they understand that they don't have to have a data center, that they don't have to have all of the hardware and the racks, and and pay for maintaining it and all those things, and then we're able to provide a level of security that it would be impossible for them to provide themselves, for the unless you're Boeing or some giant behemoth. The ability to do what we do and then provide it across our 50,000 clients is staggering, right? And there's I actually had a person say to me not too long ago in a meeting with a major county, well, I'm really concerned about your security. I said, okay, well, we should talk about that. My question, how many people do you have in your security department? how many people work on cybersecurity? Well, it's like 3 or 3.5 if you count, I said, well, we have like, oh, I don't know, 800 or 900. So it's not my security you should be worrying about, right? And that's
Right.
what the cloud brings to people. We bring security, we bring access. Now you can get access to your work from wherever you are, on many different devices. So there's a wide range of incredible benefits that the cloud brings, including this economy of scale, where the larger the entities get, the better their money works for them.
Yeah. Well, now, Derek, talk a little bit about when you're going through these processes, and especially when you talk about legacy systems and how to modernize the legacy system. It seems like this is a pretty long journey that you've been on since 2014 and 2016. But I assume there's still a lot of steps that you have to go through to actually get approved and to implement ERP sort of advancements. Give our audience a little bit of the day in your life when it comes to making these things actually get put in place.
Yeah, the first thing you have to do is relay that there's a problem. As Jim was talking about, there's a lot of legacy employees that say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. If you can just show them that the cost of a piece of paper, and at the scale that they're using it, is giant, and just the reduction in paper costs almost pay for it. But then it's really efficiency. Being effective at your job is doing it well, and doing it efficient is really the overhead costs of resources. It's the largest cost any business has. Well, at least with school districts, it's the cost of your staff. And if you can, reallocate that resource to something other than having to press some buttons or sign a document, that's something that you need to kind of relay to, the superintendents or your upper management, or, your chief financial officer. And, I definitely had a lot of struggle with trying to implement the things that I wanted to do. I was the AP manager for 6 years before I was a director, and I really had to push, and I got a lot of pushback from our IT department, and it may have been a fear of losing their jobs.
Mhm.
So, I always say it's not really about you losing your job, because there's 1,000 things that we're not doing now that we really need to do. It's just we're wasting our time on data entry. And then the cost. You have to really do a good cost analysis and show that, the ROI, it will be significant, and you'll get your costs from the program back in no time.
Yeah, Jim, talk a little bit about the loss of the data entry task, and where do you see in your districts people being reassigned to do? I mean, what is kind of the evolution of those finance departments?
Yeah, there's a whole variety. And before we go there, I just want to mention, the paper thing that Derek was talking about. A few months back, I was at a school district in Louisiana, and we had this conversation, and the superintendent stood up and said, "You know what? You just changed a really big project." I said, "Well, I don't know what you're talking about." And he said, "Well, we're building a new building over there to house documents, right? All
Wow.
these boxes, bankers' boxes full of paper of invoices and expense accounts and all this stuff. And I need another building." He says, I'm going to build that building because I have the money to do it. but I'm going to use it for something completely different now, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of the, you know, the impact. And then, you know, there are lots and lots of functions, as Derek will tell you, within the AP department that need attention. You know, business analysis that's not getting done. You know, just a variety of what I would call, you know, higher end, more strategic processes that need to be handled and dealt with and perfected and all those things that those folks now go do instead of sitting on processing paper, right? And like the one I was talking about earlier, you know, they're looking at taking all these people that are doing this free, you know, they're doing all this work free audit to now putting them into the audit position and post audit processes, and that is where the real value is, and the good work is being done instead of, you know, I can't even imagine what it would be like to sit there all day long and look at these things. It would, you know, I just couldn't do it, and I have a feeling it impacts, you know, the attrition of their employee when, you know, if you put somebody into a mundane job and they hate it, well, they're, especially this day and age, they're probably not sticking around.
And think
Yeah.
about just having to, I mean, we all have to look back at historical documents, having to get up out of your chair and go to that building to sift through mountains of paperwork, or even a lot of people have used like SharePoint or other document depository programs to just throw PDFs in and try to find them in them. If you don't index them well, it's a nightmare. I mean, just the storage and the retrieval and having to print and walk up, stand up and go up to the printer and get that document is time that you can spend doing something that's more productive.
And think about it, you know, you have outside auditors coming in to see what's going on too, right? But now instead of having them in your building and dealing with that and making sure nobody falls over the bucket or whatever, because they're not used to being in the place, you just send them a link. And they have full access to review and confirm the audit of all of these documents from wherever they're at. And now you're not paying for them to be on the road because they don't do it for free. They don't travel for free. And that stuff all comes back to the district in costs, right? So the costs just keep going up and up and out and out, and we bring it back.
And, you know, you talk about audit, right? You know, having an audit trail in Concur, you know, instead of the piece of paper that someone scribbled, you know, cost accounts on that were wrong, and the department manager was really just a rubber stamp, and it was the wrong department manager, and there was like the decimal point was in the wrong spot, and you paid the vendor way too much. You know, all that's gone, and the auditors can see, well, it went to this person, it went to this person, and then it got approved and it got paid on this day, and there's the check number. I'm good.
Every piece of data that passes through Concur is time stamped every time someone touches it. So you have, as an auditor, visibility that astounds you. You can see it everywhere it goes, who's touched it, all those things. And as a manager on the other side of it, if you're suddenly getting bottlenecks in the system, you run a report to say, well, why is this guy's aging report graph look like this and everybody else's graph looks like this? You can also see how long it took for them to review that document before they approved it. Was it 3 seconds or was it 3 minutes?
Or you can also see if they opened up any of the receipts instead of just blindly hitting that approve button.
Yep. So there's the power is really in the data. I mean, trust me, there's a reason why you can't watch TV right now for an hour and not have AI talked about in a commercial at least 2 or 3 times, right? Because it really is reading and analyzing all this data and collating it and then providing it to you in near real time. I mean, think about when you have no controls over your spending like this, how do you even know where you are to your cash flow target? right? At any moment, you can look and see, well, okay, here's where I am to cash flow. No more is it the guy walks into the office and says to everybody, stop buying everything. We're out of budget. We got a month to go. We got to really cut it back, right? Because they didn't have any controls and weren't paying attention. Couldn't know about it till it was too late.
Yeah, Derek, you were nodding vigorously to what Jim was saying about
Yeah,
that when it comes to this.
even expanding on it, like doing accruals, at year end or month end. We used to have to sort through, people's desks to say, hey, where's that invoice that we should have paid? I know we're having some problems with it, but I pressed a button in intelligence and it gives me an accrual report. Everything that's in the system, doesn't matter if it's problems, whatever, it's all there right to see. And I mean, we still have a lot of legacy process at the district, and it takes us forever to close the books. I'm done with AP in about a day.
Yeah, and to build on that, I was at a large state just south of me here not too long ago. And when you're in the public sector, a lot from transparency rules, depending on what state you're in, city, county, whatever, you have to provide a report on what you've spent and where it went and all that. So this state puts out annually a big report on how they spent money in travel and expense and where it all went and all that. It's a 168-page document. So we had the gentleman in the room who was in charge of doing that after the year end. It takes him 4 months to get everything he needs from all the agencies. And we sat and we looked at what he needed and the things he needed, and we estimated he'd probably do that same thing in about 4 hours.
Wow.
Because he'd have all the data. He just then has to decide how he wants it to look.
Right.
Right. And it's just, he was like, oh, please, please save me.
Yeah. Well, when you talk about legacy paper-based processes, one of the arguments used to be, and you guys can tell me if it's still the case, that people perceive the paper-based processes to be more secure. I mean, even when you think about signatures, right? I mean, you probably have all this data in, but then you have to print it out and have someone physically sign and then fax it or something like that, right? Versus that. Has that perception changed at all? I mean, even just the past 2 years of pandemic and everything having to be digital. Talk a little bit about the state of play when it comes to these processes from a security and data safety standpoint.
So I'll start there. One of the things to think about is when you're doing that, you have you have near zero capability to, if you have a large volume of paper, to pick up on duplicates, to pick up on major errors, exclusions, fraudulent trends or patterns. You might get somebody to sign in blue ink on a piece of paper and it makes you feel good about it. They don't know what they're signing. They don't know how many times they've signed it. One of the best cases down in Fort Lauderdale, a guy in the AP department at the county opened a shell corporation, was sending invoices to the county that paid him upwards of $7 million over a course of about 18 months. They caught him he was an Eastern European fellow, and he was going back. They caught him literally at the airport when somebody finally discovered and arrested him, and they were able to recover almost all of the funds. But that's what paper does to you. You think it's secure. What if it burns? What if you have a fire?
Yeah.
Your records are gone. There's just so many things. Go ahead, Derek.
I've got a really good scenario. This one, I think a lot of people will probably. So our sports officials, we pay our sports officials non-encumbered spend, so there's no requisition. And the athletic directors, we've got around 50 of them, and we've got a lot of sports officials. So the athletic directors give them a piece of paper to fill out. The athletic director collects it, and this is prior to Concur. They would send it to the athletics department via email, right? So 1 month, the person who managed this process got sick, and several other secretaries were trying to back her up, and they printed out the same request for payment 2 or 3 times, right? And the athletic director every month would have stacks of paper like this on their desk that they would just sign, and have no idea really what they're signing, and would send it to AP. And I forget how this came about, but I think it was an audit. They found a duplicate because we didn't keep the same invoice number system on there. It was a handwritten thing. You know, we didn't have the same amount because people were erroring in their writing down of how much this person's supposed to be paid. So our controls in our ERP were based on invoice number, amount, and date. And each one of those things were all up in the air because someone was writing it down. So we had we still haven't found all of them, at least 300 of our sports officials got paid 3 times.
Oh.
And
they were big fans.
Yeah. And believe me, I think we got 1 check back because someone was nice and says, "Hey, you guys already paid me for this." But as soon as we started using Concur, we started seeing that happen again because they had 3 people managing that process. So we told the athletic directors to make sure that the sports officials, just instead of emailing it to 3 different people, they just send it into Concur Capture. So Concur Capture automatically reads it. It flags it as a possible duplicate. So it may not be a duplicate, but it flags it so someone can actually look. I can look back and see if we already paid that. And I tell you, the sports officials, that's 1 instance. There were multiple instances of us just paying vendors 2, 3, 4 times for non-encumbered spend. There's no requisition, and we're just, we get a piece of paper in AP, we just pay it. Concur stopped it all.
But now, on the flip side of this, I know that the number 1 issue of concern for most district officials, and Derek, you can tell me if I'm right with this, but the idea of cybersecurity and the idea of identity theft and ransomware is something. I mean, you look at LA Unified just a couple of weeks ago, and many of these phishing attempts, many of these malware implementations surround financial dealings, right? I mean, and it seems like you can get in a lot of the kind of again, the phishing attempts. It's like, oh, well, you need to process this payment for the superintendent and to get it through. Jim, maybe you could talk about some of the security apparatus that you have in the system to help combat the battle for cybersecurity that we're all engaged in right now.
Oh, sure. I mean, I forget the number of how many thousands of pings, which would be attempts to breach our firewall, there are per minute. It's thousands, right? There's bots out there everywhere, looking for holes, right? So we have a whole multi-layer, and we have a document we provide clients when they have questions. We call it our trust documents, right? And it shows them this layer. Cybersecurity is not a thing, it's multiple things. It's a whole variety, so that if it gets through one spot, the next one stops it. And then quite frankly, the business we're in, we house literally the who's who around the globe. We have their stuff, right? So it's a very big deal to us. We'd be out of business. if we couldn't do it, right? So we have I mean, teams and teams of incredible professionals. This is all they do every day is protect the platform, right? And continue to upgrade their game, because the bad guys are doing it. They're upgrading their game, and you've got to stay ahead of them at all times. So it's a major investment. It's a major part of our budget. And we have literally hundreds of people working on it and creating this security layer stack to prevent those kind of invasions. And those are things a school district has no chance. I mean, you think of LA Unified, right? How big are they? You know, they had no chance. You know, nothing in comparison to ours.
And so Derek, is having kind of the software as a solution, does that free you up from some of those duties when it comes to cybersecurity and your financial operations versus maybe other aspects of your network?
Well, one of the bigger problems that we've had over the years is email scams, where somebody would figure out the email of somebody in AP or some director and would email AP under a false name. Let's say it's the superintendent, and say, listen, Mr. AP person, I need to get this paid immediately. And we would pay it. And I think that's happened twice since I've been with the school district for about 13 years. It doesn't happen that often.
Mm-hmm.
And that's more or less because we have constant training on it. Everybody is told, be careful, always look at, the email addresses. And now we even have a header on our email. This is not this is not one of your people, but that came about because, just like everybody has the same problem. There's a lot of scams out there. I've never seen anybody break into Concur. But let's say, God forbid, it did happen. There's a workflow. So it's like if somebody actually tries to get something paid, they have to submit it. And that submission would go to a manager and so on and so forth. And it's not just one person, it's not just, you don't need to break into one thing. You would have to break into multiple different areas, because you'd have to be able to submit it. You'd have to be able to approve it. You have to make sure that there's budget funding for it. And this is not going to happen with Concur.
And so, so that isn't as much of a worry then, as you're saying, as it would have been under previous.
I would say we don't worry about it at all anymore. I don't. If an invoice comes in, it's not. We may have to push it to Concur Capture, but we're not just blindly paying something when somebody asks us to. I mean, we used to have someone sign stuff, but a lot of times someone would sign a piece of paper and submit it to accounts payable to pay through email. And that's the kind of stuff that we were worried about. And there's really no more, we still do process things through, with requisitions that aren't in Concur, but there's a three-way match process. So that's security. But when it comes to things that don't have that level of security, small dollar spend, unencumbered spend, and things like that, we now have that, because Concur has a digital workflow that you just can't override it. You can't send an email and say, pay this, and not go through some sort of digital approval process. So we don't even worry about it.
Yeah, because what you're saying is, so when that prince from Nigeria gets the administrative assistant to get suckered into whatever it is, you still can't complete the process without going into the portal or within whatever that the SAP Concur, like walled garden, so to speak.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. We'll talk a little bit about advice you might have for some of the folks here on in the audience here about who might be working through a number of different legacy systems and are looking to take the next steps. Derek, what would you recommend them do today? What would you recommend them do to put on their agenda in the next 6 months, and then maybe in a big picture sense over the course of the next year? Because I'll assume that this is a pretty extensive process, right?
Simple things first. Just do a SWOT analysis of your process. What are you good at? What are you bad at? And if if a majority of your staff's time is spent with things that can be automated, try to figure out how to automate. That would be the first step. The second step with like in 6 months, let's say you decided to move forward with Concur. The first thing to do is map out, what do you really want it to do? We all have bottlenecks and problems and things like that. What do you want it to solve? And have a good plan before you start. Concur is great, and they'll help you figure out what what you don't know, what you don't know, but at least get the low-hanging fruit, right? Try to say, hey, we got to improve this. Let's try to figure out a way to do it. And that would be your 6 month. Then if you did get Concur in, really take advantage of listening to the solution consultants. They know what they're doing. They really can help you, but they really work on what you tell them. So you have to try to not see things in the lens of your current process. You have to try to think of things differently. Like a lot of people, we get into these robotic processes and you're just doing the work, and sometimes you forget why you're doing the work. So try to discuss with the solutions consultants and tell them what you're doing every day, and try to figure out why you're doing the things that you are doing, because they may be obsolete or they may be something that you can automate, and always, and that's maybe a year or actually during implementation, you want to make sure that you keep an eye out for things that you can improve. Always try to improve. But then after you've done Concur, let's say you're implemented, you're running, make sure you do a post-mortem. You have to look at the data, because that's where your savings comes. You get this running for 6 months, right? And you're not done. You don't just implement it and say, now we got all this stuff automated. Well, the good finds are, who's following policy? Where are the bottlenecks? Where is the spend? Are we getting discounts? Like if we're spending a whole ton of money at Staples, and it's all stuff that is outside of the system, it's kind of hard for your purchasing department to recognize that and get the discounts that that maybe you may be able to increase that. You also find a lot of people spend outside of your contracts. If you see constant people going to places where you buy automotive parts, where you've entered into a contract where you get dramatic discounts, you may see that people are not acknowledging to the vendor. They're going up to the desk and just say, I want that, and they're not getting the discount. Well, if you watch and do some expense reporting, you can really see where the gaps are, and then, just try to fill them, try to stop it. That would be my suggestions.
That's a lot of great advice there. Jim, anything else from your experiences that could complement? That was a pretty long list of suggestions that Derek has there.
Yeah, no, one of the things I would add is that, you're going to have your core, your ERP, that's going to be your core. But as a technologist, if you're looking to modernize and you want to automate in that, you're looking at technologies like Concur, that are going to bolt on to your main financial systems. One of the keys to, getting and protecting the money you're investing is to make sure, like for us, we're owned by SAP, we're SAP Concur, but we're agnostic when it comes to who we can work with. We can work with any financial system literally on the planet. So we become like a bridge technology. And those are the kinds of technologies you should be looking for. So for example, if Derek's going from on-prem to cloud to Concur, don't care, right? Doesn't matter. It's not going to impact us. We're going to be there when you're on-prem, and then flip the switch and we're going to be there when you go to the cloud. So for people who are doing even a more draconian switch, they're leaving one ERP platform to go to another one completely. Again, it's of no consequence to Concur. So when you're looking to invest your dollars, not only on Concur, but on anything, one of the things you really need to think about when you're spending taxpayer dollars is, okay, what happens here if there's a change to this technology I'm going to invest in? Run away from proprietary technologies, run away from things that are going to lock you in. Oh, you changed to that. Well, oh, that's a whole nother license, that kind of stuff. That's, oh, you want that? Well, that's going to be a customization, right? In the world of Concur, we look customizations like a swear word to us. We're highly configurable. We customize nothing, right? So when you're looking at spending your district's money, think about technologies that are going to bridge between technologies that will move from one technology to the other if you make a move. Those kinds of things. Is it secure? Does this company have the size and the critical mass to be able to support the district and secure the district and do all those kinds of things? Those are really important, pieces around the edge that you really need to think about when you're getting ready to give somebody a purchase order for a major technology buy.
Yeah, that's some great insights there too. I knew that the toughest part of my job this afternoon would be to end the conversation. We could go on for a while, but we are heading up to the top of the hour here. Derek, I want to ask you one question though, kind of as we finish up. What's on your wish list? I mean, we've got Jim here on the line. When you look out over the horizon of the next couple of years as a progressive district who's obviously a high-end user, what's kind of on your wish list that you to add more efficiencies? Any sort of ideas along those lines?
Wait, let me get my magic wand. Wait.
Well, we have a P card program now, and it's using the platform, our bank's platform, and it's terrible. So I know Concur has company build statements. We're gonna probably move forward with that. What else do we have? I mean, we're actually changing our everything. We're using the federal relief funds, and we're getting a new ERP. So we're working on just thousands of things. We're updating our procurement, payroll. I want to start instituting, a better ACH process. We don't utilize it very well. But P card, that's really what we got to start working towards. If you talk about being secure, like P cards, much better than checks. It's much better than an invoice. You get the actual data. You can see what somebody bought. So there's a lot of things that we can do with P cards, and that's kind of where I want to push the district. I wanted to get them to start using them more.
Great. And Jim, I know in all of our conversations, I mean, this is just a constantly evolving process for you guys, right? Too. I mean, you're taking these
Oh
sort of
yeah.
ideas from districts. So give us a little bit of a horizon of some of the things that might be coming down the pike that I don't
Oh
want you to.
sure. We look for we're not a closed society, right? So we're always looking for best of breed and partners. So we have a pretty robust partner ecosystem for particular functions that it's better for us to bring up the best of breed to our clients once we've vetted it, right? If you're getting one of these apps from one of our partners, you can rest assured that we have vetted it to the nth degree. And the only time it becomes a Concur app is once it's been through a pretty rigorous process. There's one, for example, that we just brought on that literally is a technology to go through the entire system that an organization has and find all of those old subscriptions and license payments and that you're still paying for that nobody's using. It's millions of dollars in many occasions, right?
Yeah.
Another one that we're doing now, we have a partner that, for all the people that are concerned about the environment and all of that, it's it lays on so that when you go into book travel and Concur and you're going to take a trip and do whatever an expense, it'll tell you if you take this flight, this is the carbon footprint. You take this flight, it's carbon. If you go by train, it's this. And then it allows, and it collects all that data. So for large private entities who might be being traded on, on the stock exchanges or something else, or school districts or colleges that need to now report on what they're doing to reduce their carbon footprint, this is one major way to do it, right? So we have, so that program is constantly evolving, tax recovery, environmental, carbon footprint reduction, license issues, deadwood that you're paying for, and that there's just a variety of things that we're always looking for, that best of breed that will bring real value to our client base. And if they don't hold up or we cut them loose. We did one of those not too long ago. So it's important to us that we continue to provide more value to our client base because they're like Derek, right? They want more value. They want to understand it. We do have a major P card program that goes on. As a matter of fact, we just hired a couple of former clients who did that very thing to help manage that program for our clients. So yeah, we're always innovating, always.
Great. Well, Jim, with that, I'll leave you with the last word. I see that our time is just about up, so I'm going to wrap things up here. I'd like to thank Derek and Jim, our presenters today, for a very informative presentation. I'd like to thank all of the audience members for joining us as well. As a reminder, you'll get an email within the next few days that contains a link to this recording, along with the slides. Thanks again for participating and have a great day. Jim, Derek, thanks a lot.
Thank you.